Hello, everybody. This is going to be a quick video on finally a champion for C has arrived. I'm very excited. So let's get right into it. Okay, so I'm going to read this person's Q&S question in completion. Why is weak typing like C bad? Dan said, because it would do illegal things and set the computer on fire. But I disagree with that, and I feel insulted and feel insulted. Illegal things are legal if we specify the rules. Illegal and legal are really concepts under different levels of encapsulation. For example, we think that an array index out of bounds is illegal. We say that C is bad because it does not raise an error when it happens. However, actually in C's documentation, array sub I is actually treated as array, the dereferencing array plus I. As long as we are crystal clear about what we are doing, there's basically no such thing called illegal or legal. The beauty of weak typing is the freedom that we have that is beyond the language itself. We can do whatever we want given the language, C, for example, just as a platformer tool. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, I too program in C, C++ for the freedom. I like to call it freedom from fear of slow execution. I have never liked the like the just the championness of this whole thing. But yeah, I've never I've programmed in C, C++. I actually like it, and oftentimes we'll build things. You'd be building in another language, whether it's Python or even in Java, where you need a little speed. You drop down into C, C++. I've never done it for the freedom. I always do it for the speed. That's just me, though. Okay, so let's talk about while we're talking about this array sub I nonsense. We're not programming in C or C++ without doing pointer math, right? So everybody, yes, I did actually spend time modifying this New Hampshire license plate, which has the greatest of all mottos: live free or die. I've changed it to array plus plus. For those of you who don't know, when you program in C, C++, you can just do pointer math and march your way through an array by doing plus plus. It does it based on the size of the type. It's outstanding. And when you start programming in C and you've been programming in another language, this calls to you like the ring of power does to column. And you just start over optimizing, or let's just call it appropriately optimizing, since we're being positive about C++ right now. I actually like that this happened in a previous semester. In the first semester, I actually recruited Dr. Lee to come and talk to us. I felt like at the peak of what would be functional programming love in the class, and had her come and give a talk on how to stop currying and code in C. Basically, all these functional programming languages are nice and all, but if Moore's law is dead, and the only way we're going to get performance is by engineering it in, you're going to have to program in C in order to do that. It was a lot of fun. I ordered from Pointers Pizza and a Thai food so that people could choose whether they wanted curried food or pointers. So there you go. So it was a lot of fun, and we can't do that this semester. So very sadly, we're going to have to do it here. Okay, so let's just talk about this a little bit, just following the spec. So, however, in the C's documentation, it says that. How can that? This is basically, there's no such thing as legal or illegal at this point. This is a ginormous security hole. Like, don't fool yourself. Like this whole thing of like, this illegal things and set the computer on fire. Like, this is not minor. This array index out of bounds situation or buffer overflow, estimates is 1/3, if not more, of all of the security vulnerabilities in all software. And so don't fool yourself into thinking this is some semantic thing. Oh, they're really just concepts in different levels of encapsulation if you ignore what I'm going to, without any justification at all, conservatively, in my opinion, estimate that $1 trillion in damages have been done by this array index out of like overflow allowing situation. And so that is not, one last point on this whole thing, like proof, this is a Cosgrove proof by it's been 50 years and we still can't get it right. Like the idea that the documentation says this, we can do whatever I want, right? Like, and like, there would be a little bit more, I'd be a little more motivated by this argument if people just didn't keep screwing this up. It's been around for 50 years. C has been around, like everyone knows this rule. Everyone keeps just screwing it up. And there's just security exceptions. There's just crashing software. Like it's just an unbelievable. Now, if I say that it's been $1 trillion in damage, the counter I would make to that argument is that, oh yeah, also like the software that has been written in C and C++ has caused, I don't know how many $1 trillion in productivity. So don't get me wrong, right? Like I'm not trying to make it out like C is a terrible language. So I have a great deal of affinity for C. It knows who it is. And it's a incredibly optimized. It's portable assembly language. Let's face it, and an incredible amount of effort goes into its tools. It's just and an incredible amount of great software is built in it. Don't get me wrong. And there's nothing wrong with C++ being your favorite language. There's nothing really wrong with choosing it as the language for the system that you're going to build. However, I believe it is very strongly, it is better to be honest with yourself when you go into this. Like, if you're going to choose C or C++, you need an answer to the security problems, right? You need to figure out how you're going to defend yourself against making these mistakes, like how you're going to make it so that you are not going to fall victim to this thing that so many people have fallen victim to. Another one too is you can pretend like, well, like include, it's not that bad, right? Like if you're going to build a large system in C++, you need a budget for build engineers because you need somebody who's working on the makefile. Not all projects need that, but certainly a lot of them do. And so it just seems better to be honest with yourself of like, I'm going to choose C++ because like it's got the tools, I can hire people who work in it, right? Like, and it's going to be blazingly fast, right? But you need to be, I just feel like it's better to sort of know, like, don't think you can't do this. It's very similarly, if you're going to choose other languages, you need answers to questions too. Like Python, like you need a plan if you're going to build something in Python for like how you're going to keep it working as the system scales. And like if anybody changes the name of a method and there's no compiler to help you find those paths that aren't being run, you need a plan for that. Now, from what I understand, like what you can do, I built a system, a prototype in Python. It was fantastic. It was wonderful. As the system got bigger and bigger, I just had to basically transition over. Just because it was hard to keep it from like, like it was this prototype system that kept being released and people were using it. And like any small change, like would not be kept. So from what I understand, like if you're going to do this, like you need to have a lot of testing. You have a lot of tests in place to allow you to maintain a system and modify it with no compiler to help you. It can be done, but like you got to have a plan for it. Similarly, like let's say you're like, yeah, well, I'm not doing C or C++ or Python. I'm going to do ML. Like you need to have a plan for the complete lack of library support. Sort of the inverse of Python. Like I like Ruby. If I'm going to try to like push for Ruby over Python, I need an answer for like why we're not going to choose Python and like why we're going to be okay without some of the libraries that maybe Python has that Ruby doesn't. Like ML is that in like crazy town spades, right? Like if you're like, no, we're going to use ML for this project, like you better have an answer of why we don't need any libraries or why we're going to build them all. The other one you got to have is answer you need to have a question for. Like you need to have an answer for this is like when HR complains that they can't hire anybody, right? Like you better be in Pittsburgh or Ithaca, right? So that you can hire CMU or Cornell students, right? And even then, right? Like that's like you need to have a plan for like how you're not going to be able to hire anybody or keep anybody, or you're going to have to train everyone in your language, right? Sort of the opposite of like C, C++ and Python. And sort of another one is like every non-JavaScript language that you're going to choose, you need an answer for why it's okay your system's not going to run on the web, right? And a lot of times you end up building hybrid things. Certainly I, a lot of times will like used to program in C, C++, period. And then, a lot of times now you'll sort of drop down into C, C++, sort of hybrid language, hybrid systems. But Not that other languages can't run on the web, but just the idea that, you know, when you're choosing a language, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong at all with like C or C++ being your favorite language, or also defending it or choosing it, like I'm saying. I'm just making this argument, advocating for like, it's much better to have a very frank conversation about how like, oh, like array buffer overflows are a big, huge problem. And we need to address that, or we need to be prepared for it when you're going to make this choice. The other thing I'd say is that I hope no one feels offended by this. I hope this was fun for everybody. And I would like people to chime in with counter arguments. One of the problems with you know, us being at a distance is you get a really good question like this, I make slides and there's no way for anybody to come back on it. So please either comment on Piazza or you know, post in the Q&S forums, and I'll try to keep this going. And with that, we'll talk about this soon.